Bay West Church meets at 100 Emerson Road in Palm Bay at 11 a.m. on Sundays. We're glad you decided to check us out. God has a specific message of hope for your life and mine today. So listen up.
Control. It seems that everywhere you look, there's a lack of it, or we're just plain out of it. Whether it's our jobs, our bills, the government, or our kids, there's always something that seems out of control. As we spend so much energy trying to get ahead of the chaos, it leaves you to wonder, is it even possible? Were we even meant to be in control? If we are, what does that look like? Or are we spending a lot of time and energy chasing something that we were never meant to have?
You know, as we begin this series called Out of Control, I had an interesting experience yesterday with the topic of control. You know, I was I think there's nothing more that epitomizes the more something being out of control than third grade boys basketball. Have you seen that? Have you watched this thing that happens on the court? Have you seen this? This is amazing. Well, it's not just boys, it's boys and girls. It's a co-ed league. My boy plays in Upwards, and we went up to play. And I noticed, I don't know if it's because I'm preaching on control, or I don't know if it's just because I have a problem with control, the Lord's just putting it in my brain. But all the way up there was an issue of control. I was trying to get my kids in the car at the right time to go. And everybody wanted to do things their way. Have you ever felt that? You ever been there? Trying to get kids out. I get out on the road, you know, and I'm going to confess in front of you Facebook Live, and you Facebook Live over here, and our online campuses, not online campus, but our video podcast and everything. I'm such a control freak that I have a loop around to go around the light there at Palm Bay and Hollywood. I do. You know, I go through the racetrack. I do, because everybody lines up and nobody wants to turn right, and I'm sitting there going, go, come on, go. Well, yesterday, I take my little loop around, which is almost 100% perfect for me, and it works every time. And I get over there to go on a racetrack, and there's 4 cars lined up. And I'm looking down the road, and there's like 1 car coming down that 4-lane road on our side, right? You know, so you figure, of course this person can get out. Of course they can. And they're not. You person in the orange Ford Explorer. If you're watching. Okay, I'm just telling you. You're just standing there, and I'm going like, go. And you're trying to set a bad example for your kids. I'm just trying to do the flick go, you know, like down here where they can't see, you know, and you're like, come on. There's 4 cars. So finally, there's no cars coming, and you know how much of an oddity that is on Palm Bay Road, right? So it's just like usually packed. Finally, no cars are coming, and they ease out, and I'm like, well, they must have been trying to get in the far turn lane. Oh, no, they lived out in the lane that was right by them, that no one was driving in. God! So finally, people get out on the road, and I get out on the interstate, and I'm driving down the interstate. And I'm in the left-hand lane because we're a little bit late, and I got it. Okay, I've got my phone, and even though I know where I'm going, I've got my map on because I want to make sure that I'm on schedule, on my time schedule, that, you know, if I'm going to go a little faster and make up a little bit of time to get in my window. I mean, I don't know if you are like that. Okay, I guess I'm confessing I'm a real control freak. So I'm going down the road, and I get behind 6 cars in the left-hand lane going 65 miles an hour. I mean, they're living in 1995 when the interstate was 65. It's 70. Come on. Can you at least go? I look down the road, and literally 6 cars, left-hand lane. Somebody over here in the right-hand and the middle lane, they've got it figured out. They're doing what they're supposed to. You don't care how. Does anybody care how fast anybody drives in the middle lane? Of course not. It doesn't matter. Drive whatever you want there. You can do cartwheels down the middle lane. Nobody drives in that lane. Do that. That's for you. That's for all you free spirits out there. Middle lane, left lane, people like me. That's what you're there for. And so I'm looking, and I'm trying. I'm not going to ride up on people's tail. Okay, I have done it before, but I'm not going to do it yesterday. I'm trying to be good. I'm preaching on control. I'm backing off. All of a sudden, I look over in the far right-hand lane where all the slow people are supposed to be driving. All you people drive 25, that's where you're supposed to be. I look over there, and there is like a mile of empty space. And I'm just thinking, if I had control of this, I could just lift these 6 cars and drop them over in there, and then I could do what I want. Because that's the way it's supposed to be. Don't care, slow, get there. That's what it's all about, right? So I did what every red-blooded American does, and got back in my lane, and then I went on down the road. And then I come up to get to the boys, the basketball, the Upwards basketball, 3rd and 4th graders. This is the first time my son is playing full court. They're also playing on taller goals. And I'm like, oh, I'm all worried about that. They're playing a team, the 76ers. These guys can't be in 4th grade. There's just no way. There's like 3 of them that are my height, and they can out-jump me. There's something wrong with this, my boy, and I'm like, okay. But my kids are playing great. My son makes a steal. He makes a steal, goes coast to coast, and makes the first points of the game. I'm going to tell you, yes. That was amazing. It's unbelievable. He does this, and then at the end of the first period, it's 4-0 to us. So I'm like, okay, it can't be so bad. Then they jump out ahead of us, and we put this guy in, and you're not supposed to steal the ball in this league. They have it's weird rules. I don't see how the refs call it, because some of it you're not supposed to steal it, but if the ball gets farther enough away, you can take it. You can't reach, but if they dribble it right into your stomach, you can run with it. I don't know what's going on. So anyway, we got a boy who brings up the ball up several times, and every time they steal it from him. And I'm like, oh, God, I thought you couldn't steal. And then Braden comes down, another boy takes the ball. He tries to steal it from the boy, and they call a foul on Braden. They're like, you can't reach, you can't steal. I'm like, but did you not see we're down now 13-4? Because 6 times in a row so I'm like come on. I wish I could control the refs. I wish I could control what's going on there. I'm looking at the kids, and they're driving down the court, and I see people open. Do you watch basketball, and you see people standing on an island over there drinking some tea on your team, and you're like, man, if we just threw them the ball and they shot it, it would be a goal. It would just be there. It would be 2 points, and we could be back in this game from this large deficit now that we're in. And I can't do anything about it because I'm sitting over there, and they're just dribbling around and. You know how 3rd graders do. Have you noticed this? They dribble. The last instinct is pass. If I pick up the ball and the other guy won't let me travel or double dribble and start dribbling again, and I can't shoot it from this, that is the last thing is to pass. And by that time, if you play basketball at all, if that's where you're at, there's 15 people over you, and you can't pass, and you're probably gonna dribble it off somebody's leg or your own leg out of bounds. You're gonna bounce it or something. It's gonna be a bad situation. So I'm watching this chaos happen the whole game, and I'm just realizing, this whole stuff is out of control. Have you ever been there in an environment where you see everything, and you're just like, man, if it would be okay. You ever been there? If it's only me, I feel really naked and transparent in front of you. But there are places like that, and I begin to look at our life. You look around in our city, in our government. Guys, are you following any of this stuff that's going on in Washington? Yeah, I almost fell. That would have been an out-of-control moment, wouldn't it? Right there. Now, outstanding. We'll make a little animated GIF of me falling and bring it back, and we'll just bring it back every so often. Are you watching the government? What's going on? Does anybody out there feel like all they do is shut the doors and one group gets on one side and the other gets on the other side, and they just shoot bottle rockets at each other? You think that's what they're doing? They just throw paper wads and staplers and, the $600 hammers that they buy with our money and just throw them at each other, and they're just fighting. I don't know what they're doing. What are we paying those people to do? It's like we pay people to go up there and get mad at each other and just sit there and go, yeah, but he, but she. What's going on? I feel my vote is so out of control there. It feels like you're out of control. You look at our culture sometimes and our decisions. I read, you get on social media, you see lack of control all over the place. There was an article that I read yesterday, well, it was 2 days ago, sorry, that a friend of mine posted, and I'm just like, are you kidding me? What happened? There's a couple that they went on vacation. They live in California. They went on vacation to Las Vegas. And I don't know if you read this, but they have a 2-year-old. Seemed like good parents. The father was decorated with a Purple Heart for his service overseas. The girl is an entertainer type of person. She feels a lump in the side, a mass in the side of her child, her little girl. They take her to the emergency room. And the first thing they come back with them is, your little girl has cancer and we need to take out her kidney. Just like that, an emergency room doctor, ER doctor. They asked for a second opinion. And the hospital calls Child Protective Services and has their parental rights temporarily suspended and won't allow them to get a second opinion on their child. They've done no biopsy. They have no tests. They felt it, they've diagnosed, they feel like that's it, and that's where you're at. Now, I know there's probably more to the story than that, but I can't imagine feeling that out of control. So pretty much what happened was CPS said, if you'll sign a waiver to let her have the surgery that all the doctors and UCLA, and to transfer to UCLA medical unit, which was about $10,000, by the way, for them to transfer that to UCLA, we will give your parental rights back. And that's scary. And they ended up operating on this child, and they didn't take her kidney out, praise the Lord. They did a biopsy, which, like, why couldn't you have done that first? You know, just saved all the trouble. But how out of control does that sound to you? You know, and the truth is, you look online, you look in newspapers, I don't know about you, but my trust level probably for media and for things that are reported, even in that story, I wonder, was it really that bad, or something's missing, got to be something. You know, I mean, it's down. I grew up thinking that if I watched it on the evening news, it was right. I just don't know anymore. It just feels like it's out of control. And as you begin to look at this, and it just seems, I see this over and over now that we're preaching this series. You know, as we see we're coming, how do we live in a world that seems so out of our control? How do we honor God? How do we make right decisions? How do we please the Lord? How do we have success in a world? It used to be that the things of the Lord seemed to kind of go a little bit with culture. Not really, but kind of, sort of. You know, there were some big things you could kind of work under that umbrella. But as the umbrella is kind of moving away, now we're forced into almost a more chaotic situation of how do I honor the Lord in the midst of all of this chaos? You know? And I begin to look at, okay, control. How is this supposed to look in our lives? I don't think God ordained me, not like as a pastor, but just gave me the ability to sit here and look at everything over there and go, man, I just want to fix that. I'm just going to fix that. All these things that I have no control over. I don't think that's my position. So what is control supposed to look like, you know, in our world? I want to set up, before we start this series is going to be great. We're going to talk about some very practical things. We're going to be talking about the control. How do you live with out of control finances? How do you live with out of control marriage? How do you deal with out of control emotions? That's very difficult right now. I know, you know, I can freak out in a moment. You know, that's a deal. You know, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with out of control kids? Parenting? No, never heard that. No, I don't have a problem with that at all. But anyway, we're going to deal with some of those things over the course of this series. It's going to be a great practical series, but what I want to set up is, my fear is if we start talking a lot about control and we don't have a framework of what God wants control to look like in our lives, we're not going to understand how this all works together for the glory of God. And so what I want to do today is, look, how does control look in our life? And I think part of it is a misconception that we carry. Here's the first question I want to ask today that we think about. It says, do we really have control? Do we have control? I want to read you a Bible verse from Proverbs 16. And it says, this is from Solomon, who's the great writer in Proverbs, the wisest man that ever lived. Also the richest man that ever lived, and at the time, and the most powerful guy at the time. That's a good trifecta. We should try that more often. Make the wisest guy have the most money and the most power. That would be good. But anyway, so he says, we can make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps. Let that sink in, that it was written by a man who was the richest guy on the planet. The wisest guy on the planet. He knew how to, you know, wisdom, intelligence, you know, information. It's great to have information, but wisdom tells you what to do with that information. And he was one of the most powerful people on the planet. Something that none of us in here have or will ever have. And I don't know, in the ratio of the wealth of the time to right now, I don't know if anybody's going to ever have that kind of trifecta working for them. But in his eyes, he said, look, we can make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps. And what he's saying there is basically, you can make all the plans you want. You can exert your control. You can say, we're going to go there, and we're going to go there. We're going to make this happen. I'm going to do this, and then you're going to do that. And you can get in the huddle of your life with your family and all your people you influence. Say, all right, you're going to go right, you're going to go left, you're going to do this, you're going to wait, and you're going to do that. And I guarantee you, something out of that ain't going to happen. Because you can make all the plans that you want, but the truth is, you don't have the control to make that happen. Do you realize you were never meant to have total control of another human being? You realize that? Nowhere in God's word does he say, look, okay, Frank, you need to control David. That's your job. You are responsible for David. Lord, help you. Cheryl's going, Lord, help you, Jesus, Frank. Anyway, that's what's going on. Your job is to control David. Nowhere does he say that. You know, and what we see, it's almost it's an odd construction here. It says, look, we can make our plans, which means you want to make plans. We recognize. Solomon's smart enough to go in, hey, yeah, I know you want to make your plans. I know you want to tell everybody where to go. I know you want to have your schedule and what you're going to keep and how you're going to get there and what you're going to spend money on. But it ain't going to happen. The Lord determines our steps. I had a friend the other day. They were planning to spend some money on a really cool thing. And it ran over a curb and popped a tire. And now we have to reallocate the money, and it was a frustrating situation. I see some of the smiles out there. You've been there, right? I'm going to spend this money on crap. Doggone it! Where am I? I can't. Okay, you've been in those situations because money didn't just grow on a tree. You can't just control the amount of wealth that comes to you. You give a little bit, but not a whole lot. Something can strike in your situation. God controls the step. What God is saying through the wisest man on earth, Solomon, is that we can attempt to make our plans in all we do, but it's not that this is wrong. It's not that it's an attempt to be bad or some way, but what it is you have to understand the framework is you're going to make your plans and they're not going to all come out because you're not in control. We don't have it. It's a myth. From control freaks like me, it is just a constant struggle. If I could just, and you have to, and it's a matter of trust when it comes down to it, isn't it? If I've got to have my finger on the button all the time, there's somebody I'm not trusting to have their finger there. It's better than me. And if nobody's finger on it that I can see, no human, and I want to control it, I am really challenging the ability of God to control it. It's what I'm doing. Now, I may not say that out loud. And I may not point that out in the middle of the sentence, but when you and I feel like we need to control a situation that seems out of control, knowing that God is in control, we're wrestling control, or we're trying to wrestle control away from the one who has it. And we're saying that because I don't like the way you're doing it. You're doing it wrong. You didn't think you look at the Lord and say, look, God, you're doing it wrong. But we do. And when we try to grab control that's not our own, that's what we're trying to do. Hebrews 4:13 says this. It says, nothing in all creation is hidden from God. Everything is naked and exposed before his eyes. And listen to this. He is the one to whom we are accountable. Not only does God have the control to do everything, is God in control over everything, he is the one that's going to decide the things that are done that we do and whether we go. He's the one that we're accountable to. I know your grandmother. You respect her very much. And there's nothing you more than you want than to please her. But I hate to tell you this, God's opinion counts more. Because it's not grandma and God that you're accountable to. It's kind of like this. Actually, you may be accountable to grandma in some ways, but grandma accountable to God, and all y'all accountable to God, and that's who's going to get the final say on things. Have you ever worked for a middle manager that wanted you to do a certain thing, and you maybe jockeyed with them about this certain process or a way to do something, and then the owner of the company showed up and said, no, this is how we're going to do it, and then all of a sudden the opinions changed for everybody? Maybe been yours. And he said, oh, yeah, we're going to do this. Oh, yes, sir, I'll do it. Or maybe it was the opposite. Maybe you went with your idea, not the middle manager. And he said, okay, we're going to do it this way. And the middle manager's like, that's a great idea. I can't believe I didn't think of it first. You get that idea. This is the situation we have with God. He is in control of what's going on. Another aspect of what God is calling himself is kind of like when God says, hey, I'm the Alpha and the Omega. I'm the beginning and the end. Look, I created all this stuff and it's going to end with me. That's kind of how it is. It starts with me, I started it, and I'm going to finish it. And that's kind of how it works. He's in charge and in control all the way around. The truth is we don't have control. God is the only one that truly does. You may say, now, wait a minute. I'm a husband, or I'm a wife, I'm a spouse. I'm supposed to have a little control here. Some of you might say, I'm the man of the household. I am the leader. I'm supposed to have control. I got news for you. Here's a typical, this thing, I am a control freak to the max. I can't make Katie do anything. I can't make her do nothing. Zero. I have no control over that. But Jim, you're the husband. Wife's supposed to submit. I got news for you. That ain't got nothing to do with me. I can't make that happen. If you try to make somebody submit to you, I can tell you already, you're going to get out of the train real fast. Okay? Eventually, what that happens is, if there's submission to be had, sometimes I need to listen to her and do what she said. Sometimes she's going to listen to me, but that is a choice that I make or a choice that she makes. That's something that we do. It's not something that I can determine. Like, hey, wait, man, I'm a parent, so I got to have control over my kids. How's that working for you? How's that working? You ever had a kid do something you didn't want to do? You don't have control of your kids. You know when you're not married, right? Before you get married, before you get kids, right? You know it all, right? I did. I was like, yeah, well, I would spank that butt and straighten that out. It don't work that way. It don't work that way. Because just as hard-headed as you think you are, you just made another one. That's what you got. You ain't in control. You think you are. You ain't. That's what's up. But wait a minute. I'm the boss. I'm supposed to have control over my employees. Oh, yeah? I remember when I was working back as a teenager, and we had a phrase that we would call. It's like when they didn't have enough work for us, they would send us home, and we wouldn't get no money. So Jerry Dunn, who was like the guy over me, said, I'm going to teach you how this works, Jim. Said, you get this pallet jack that you ride. We had these pallet jacks we'd ride stuff. He said, you go to one end of the warehouse and get a pallet, and you throw a couple boxes on it, and you ride to the other end of the warehouse, which is like 2 warehouses over. Make sure you go by Paul's office so he sees you go by in the window by who's the big manager of the plant. And you go to the other end, you put that off, you put another box on, you wait about 15 minutes, and you ride back. You know what that's called? That was called slapping the saddle on the clock. That's what that was called. It's wrong. It's bad. It's a lack of integrity. And if Paul knew we were doing that, he would be upset about it. Or maybe he knew it was happening and he just didn't want to confront us or something. But the realization is this, is I can't control somebody else. I'm the weatherman, so I'm supposed to have control of the weather, right? No, well, you know how that works. It doesn't work. We don't have control. The problems actually arise when you and I start to grasp control. Think about that. That's where the problems start to arise in our lives. In the Garden of Eden, Jesus, not Eden, in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus offered the famous words, after pleading with God. He said, look, not my will, but yours be done. Jesus had a list of things he would rather do. I'd rather not do this. I would rather not have to go through this. But God, he modeled something called submission. It's your job. It's your deal. I submit to your control. And it's not that Jesus was not God and they were separate or something, but what Jesus was doing was he was modeling for us how we should live our lives. We can have a list of what we want, but ultimately that needs to be submitted to God. What would you want me to do instead? When I'm trying to control or grasp control of the others, I'm actually the opposite of the not my will be done guy. Not thy will, not my will, but thy will. I want my will. I'm like, you do my will. God, I'm not really asking you about yours. I want this done. And you want people to do it. And sometimes it could be good things. You can have some good moments and you feel like, I'm really trying to help them. I want them to do this. But you know what? God never ordained you to be in control of those people totally. You can guide, you can influence, you can share, you can react. So when I try to control others, so often, I don't know if you find this out, so often I try to make it worse. When I really clamp down, it's like when you got your bar soap. Anybody still use a bar soap? Do that type of stuff? I use the body wash and a loofah. My brother-in-law got me stuck on that. Now I feel like, I don't know what I am. I feel like I'm metrosexual or something with that thing now. But I'm doing that now. I do it. But the soap, you remember when it get wet and you start to lose you start to lose your hold on it and you squeeze it, what happens? Boop, there it goes. It starts bouncing off and control freak. The bar soap that hit the wall and it's got like a flat edge on it now where it's not supposed to have it. Oh, I used to hate that. Get a knife, try to shave that off and stuff. Ugh, no, it's supposed to stay around. Drive me nuts. Aren't you so sad? Aren't you so sad for my wife now? This is what she's been living with for 20 years. My children, I have to live with this neurotic man. This is what's going on. But the truth is, when you grasp control, when you try to wrestle it away from the one who has it. You don't get it. You just make it worse on you and usually everybody you're trying to help. Me being in control of things in a vacuum is not a good thing. You want to know why? It's because sin has corrupted my judgment. You know that? Just the mere fact of sin being poured into my life, it's corrupted my judgment. Even when I am at my best, there's a corruption of judgment in my heart that happens, because of sin being there. In Luke 12, Jesus tells a story about a rich and successful man who was had a productive farm. He was blessed with the ability to create wealth and to multiply resources. And he sees a success. He says, hey, I'm going to do something that we would probably all think is wise. He wants to take advantage of the opportunity that's there. And here's his plan. Luke 12, verse 18. It says, then he said, I know, I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then I'll have room enough to store all my wheat and other goods. And I'll sit back and say to myself, my friend, you're going to speak to yourself in the third person. Great. I'm going to sit back and say to myself, my friend, you have stored enough away. You have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. Now, that's called making your money work for you, ain't it? You're doing something, you're expanding. It seems like stewardship, but what does God say in verse 19? In verse 20, he said this, but God said to him, you fool, you will die this night, then who will get everything you work for? Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. Now, why in the world? What's the problem? What's lacking with the plan here? That should be stewardship. You're just being wise. The one thing that you didn't see in the story of that man is he never consulted the God that made him about what he should do. He just went with what he felt like he needed to do. One of the things that's absent here in the story is an understanding of the mission of God and the reason that the world exists. For him, it's like, hey, I'm just going to amass this wealth and build up this stuff, and I'll have this. Here's my plan, because the whole world is about making it easy on me, and I'm going to work really hard and then end this life easy. It's awesome. A lot of us live like that. And God said, look, you don't understand why I even put you here. You're going to die tonight and not get to enjoy any of that stuff. And you still will not have accomplished what I'm trying to do through you here on earth. Last year we were going to Alabama. And to visit folks up there. We take my mom back 1 or 2 times a year. We have some unplanned trips with the hurricanes lately, but that's all right. We went back in the summer, right? And so we had everything packed up, and we got all the plans made, and my wife is awesome. She's getting everybody, and I'm packing everything, and I've got it all in there, and I've got my time, and I've got my little phone, and I'm feeling real good. We get everything ready. She's going to drive, I was driving the first leg? I don't know. Anyway, so we start to get in the car. We've got it open, the door, and we got the van with the doors that, you press the button and they, and shut. So we get ready to shut the door. And the door goes, and it starts to go back. So I'm like, all right, I got to make the time. Come on, let's go. I press the button, and I'm going to just help it across. Now, here's something go, or something in there. I don't know what it was. But now it went back. And I tried to pull it, and now it won't even move. So it's frozen. We're in the car. My mother's in the car. Everybody's in the car. My kids are in the car. We're in the driveway backing out, and now the door won't close. And we negotiated. Katie got out, and we tried. And we looked down there, and we shot WD-40 down to something, I don't know, some thing down in there, hoping that would work, because you know what happens. If something ain't going to work, going to close, you shoot WD-40 on it, right? I don't know why that makes it work. It's just what my dad used to do when I was young. I just shoot it with WD-40. Okay. You just kind of like that guy on my big fat Greek wedding, just shoot some Windex on it. It'll fix it. That's kind of how it works. Anyway, so we shot the WD-40 on it. Nothing worked. So then our plans are all shot. Because I can't drive to Alabama with a van door hanging open. I don't know how y'all know how they engineer these vans these days. If you just roll the window down halfway, that thing is sitting there and go bop, 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 the whole time. It's terrible. So I can't do that. So we ended up having to change our plans. Now, we had all our plans. We had all our ducks in a row. We even completed a lot of those things to make those plans happen. But here's what it was. We didn't have the control over the situation to do it. And that's the reality for you and I. We don't have that type of control. We can have all the plans, but none of the control. And the truth is that God having control is the healthiest thing. Because my judgment is your judgment, my judgment is tainted by sin. But here's a couple other things. Luke 46:10 says this. God speaking, he says, only I can tell you the future before it even happens. Even everything I plan will come to pass, for I do whatever I wish. See, God is the only one with the pertinent information to make a decision. Let me tell you a story. There's a guy, his name was Ronald Wayne. He's 22 years old in the 70s. Hanging out with his buddies. They hang out all the time. And one dude was like a college dropout. Another dude like worked for a video game factory. And they just had a great time. They said, hey, why don't we start a business? So they just started a business. And like 3 months later, he sold his part of the business for $800. You think, okay, $800, that's pretty good. I like to have $800. But you got to realize it's more like $4,000 or $5,000 in today's terms. That's not bad. I just start a business. I'm just doing what I do, and I start this business, and then I sell my part of the business to somebody for, today's terms, $4,000 or $5,000. That's great. No, it's not awesome, because his two buddies were Steve Jobs and Ron Wozniak. If you don't know those names, those are the guys who started Apple. Do you realize in 2012, Apple was worth more than the entire stock exchange in the year that this cat sold his shares for $800? Every company that was on the stock exchange in 1977, when he sold this company sold his shares for $800, they don't amass the wealth that Apple was worth in 2012. And this dude's still alive. And he every day goes out and bangs his head against the wall. That's what he does. Wouldn't it have been great to know everything before it happened? To be able to know and not to think, man, these guys are idiots. Steve dropped out of college. You know what he's talking about. How's everybody going to get a computer? Nobody wants a computer. Ta-da, ta-da, ta-da. That's how it is. Everybody down, y'all got something that's your phone's more powerful than a supercomputer back in the 60s. But anyway, so here's this. Wouldn't it have been great when you follow? But see, here's the deal. When you follow God, he knows what's going to happen. And when his Holy Spirit, and when he's put all these things that he's told you and these wise principles in his word, he said, look, I'm going to make that work anywhere because I'm in control. And you follow that, you listen, and he even have access to the Holy Spirit, he may not tell you exactly what's about to happen, but he'll tell you if you need to turn right and miss that thing coming at you, or to meet someone that you need to meet, or to find that opportunity you need to find. That's what the Holy Spirit will move you there, and it'll be great. And here's the other thing. It says, in Proverbs 16:1, it almost looks like the other verse, says we can make our own plans, but the Lord gives the right answer. So not only does God know everything, but he always gives the right answer. The right answer to everything that you would ever do. It's one thing to know all the information, quite another to make sure that with that information you always do the right thing. And those are two things that you can trust about God. He always interprets the information in the right way. You can know everything and you can have the capacity to do the right, but you have to have the capacity to do the right thing with what you know. And 100% of the time, that's the way God does it. I'm going to tell you this. Realizing that you have no control really over the world, God has his control. A plan made without consulting God is a waste of time to make. You remember that. Every time you think you're going to make a decision about something, every time you decide I'm going to do it this way, I'm going to do it that way, if you haven't consulted God on how you need to make that decision, if you aren't putting his word above your best judgment in how you're making that decision, you're wasting your time and making a mess. You're creating a lesson for yourself, and probably not a lesson in a positive way. That's how that works. So, Jim, are you telling me that we don't have any kind of control whatsoever? No. There is one type of control that God has given us, and it is the most important type of control. See in Galatians 5:22 and 23. It says, what this is talking about, the Holy Spirit produces this kind of fruit in your life. So in other words, when you're following God and the Holy Spirit is controlling you and you're doing this, you've given your control over to God. It says, look, this is what you're going to see in your life. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is no law against these things. The only type of control that you and I were ever meant to possess was self-control. In God's infinite wisdom, he looked down and said, man, there's going to be all these things going on. I'm not going to make Frank take care of David and be responsible for everything David did. I'll make Frank responsible for just what Frank does. Hey, that's cool. I'll make David responsible for David. I'll do that, man. In God's wisdom, in his mercy, in his grace, he said, I'm going to keep control because I know everything that's going to happen and I know the right way to do everything. I'm going to keep main control, but I want you guys to have self-control. And here's the thing. True self-control only comes as a byproduct of following Jesus. You don't see anywhere else in that where God says, hey, you go over and do that apart from me and you get self-control. This is the evidence. This is a byproduct of following Christ. All of those things, he's like, well, Jim, joy, I'm not happy all the time. No, I heard a story one time that said it was Jesus as a poem, and Jesus was talking about, but the Bible, there was a guy talking with Jesus, and he's like, but hey, if I follow you, it says, a good book says I'll have joy in my life, and Jesus basically responded to him, yeah, you'll need the joy to bear the pain and sorrow that you're going to deal with. It's not an absence of darkness or tough things in your life, but it is the strength to make it through and still know that God is on the throne and that there are better things ahead. And here's the thing. You gain control when you give control to God. It almost seems like I'm giving it up. Yes, when you gain control of yourself, when you give control to God. See, I can have self-discipline. I can be very disciplined. Steve is a very disciplined guy. Steve runs every day. I don't do that. I know you're going, Jim, but I know your shirt's just poking out because of muscles. But no, it's not. But I'm like, Steve, I can be very self-disciplined and do that. But the truth is, although Steve is a Christian and follows the Holy Spirit, that is still, a decision like that can be made by someone who doesn't follow Christ. You know why? Because it's motivated by self-interest. I'm motivated by something inside myself. I am fulfilling my desires. But Jim, how do people become very generous who are altruistic who don't know Jesus? I know somebody, and they're very kind. Yeah. Ultimately, on the inside, they have found greater joy and a greater desire to give to others than to keep for themselves. And that's very kind. That's wonderful. We need people like that. But you know what? They're still following the desire of how they think things should be on the inside of their heart. When you give control over to God, for the first time in your life, when you follow the Holy Spirit, when you follow Jesus, you're doing something not because there's a desire that's causing you to do that, but because you are trusting something other than yourself, and you have the control that is not based on your desires, not based on your wants, not based on your stuff, but it's based on a commitment that you made to God, and you created it, and God gives you true self-control in those moments. That's when you start to make decisions that don't make sense, that you don't feel like making, that are, I'm not going to do that, or I would never have done that 20 years ago, but I'm making that decision now. Why? Because I trust the Lord. And I have control over that. And what he wants is not just this type of control in parts of our lives. We're really good at segmenting our lives into things. He wants in every area of our lives, in our careers, in our hobbies, in our purchases, for our health choices, in our doctor's visits. We have to realize that the crucial need for reliance on God. There's no other way to deal with those situations. The truth is, it's half control, it's really no control. If you say, I'm going to really obey God in this one area of my life, but you know what? I think I've kind of got it figured out over here. You're not following the control of God. You're not. I'll give you control of my parenting, but not in my marriage. I'm going to make them be really little angels, but you know what? I'm going to serve myself when it comes to my spouse. It's not going to work. I'll give you control over my career, but not my hobbies. I'll give you control of when I'm at the end of my rope, but not until then. You haven't given control of your life over to God. When you get me an acceptable level of control, I've seen this all the time. And when I'm at the end of my rope, I'm going to give you control, Lord. And then when we get it back to an acceptable level, I'll take it back. Does it work? That's just a wheels off moment waiting to happen again later. Or in a different way. That doesn't work. Let me tell you what the Lord promises to you and I when we give and recognize his control and give control over him. It's found in Proverbs 3. I love this. This is Jerry, actually, who's coming for our One-on-One with God conference, March 23rd and 24th. You do not need to miss that. That's a seminal moment in our church, in the life of our church, about making disciples. We're going to be taught something that's not about a curriculum or a tool. It is a way of life that could change this area. But he's the first guy that really turned me on to this translation of this verse. I love it. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. You've heard part of that before. Never rely on what you think you know. Never rely on that. Remember the Lord in everything you do, and he will show you the right way. There's no time on that. That's every time. Every time. If you put God first in everything you do, he will show you the right way every time. Never let yourself think that you're wiser than you are. Simply don't take control. Simply obey the Lord and refuse to do wrong. Verse 8 says this. 8. If you do, it will be like good medicine, healing your wounds, easing your pains. Honor the Lord by making him an offering from the best of all that your land produces. And verse 10 says, if you do, your barns will be filled with grain, and you will have too much wine to store it all. In other words, if you do this, if you put your control, your control, if you put this, these are the blessings that I will put in your life when you give me control of your life. The truth is, you gain control of yourself when you give control to God. And the truth is when you don't give control in an area of your life, I can pretty much tell you that's probably where the troubles in your life are going to be traced back to. Eventually, you're going to follow that train. If you were to trace it back to what caused it, it's right back to the area of where I don't give God control here. And I'm going to tell you what, it may not seem related to you. But that God knows more. He knows how every circumstance works out, and it works back to that. I'm going to give you a few action steps, okay? These are self-revelation things, okay? A couple of action steps. Here's 3 questions I want you to ask yourself now about your life and your control. And this will set up the framework for all the things that Bruce and I are going to teach you over the next few weeks. Okay? All right? First, what is one area of your life that you're trying to gain control of? And you know it. I'm going to do it this way. I know God said do that, but think about that area. I want to ask you this. How can you control yourself rather than controlling the situation? Maybe it's somebody that you're dealing with at work, or some relationship you're dealing with. Maybe it's your job. Maybe it's your finances. Maybe it's whatever. How can you turn the control not on the things over there, but how can I control myself better in that situation? How can I control the only thing that I'm meant to control, which is me? And then from there, as you think about that, I want you to think about this. For this week, this is one thing. What is one step that you can make toward trusting God's control in that area right now? Or maybe this afternoon. Maybe it's something you won't run in until tonight or tomorrow morning at work. Or there's a meeting on Tuesday or something like that. I don't know. But what can you start doing one step now to trust God's control in that area and not try to wrestle it from him? Chances are the root of your greatest heartbreak is in the midst of the area that you refuse to give control to God. And you may have struggled with it for years and years and years, and it won't go away, but it's an essence matter of control that you don't trust with the Lord. Chances are the source of your problems go back to an area of your life that you haven't acknowledged God's control over. Start today. Identify that area. Purpose to make one positive step towards trusting the only one who knows everything that will happen before it happens. The only one who will always steer you right every time. Make a commitment right now to release control in that area. Now stop trying, and do me a favor. Stop trying to justify why it's okay for you to do it. Okay, I do this. I've met people that do this. We all kind of in our hearts and our lives, we think we're the special case with God and his word really doesn't apply to us. So I really don't have to do that. Don't do that. That is a fool's trap. That's a fool's trap. Let it go. Some of you, you may come today and you don't know Jesus. You don't follow Jesus. You just came to kind of show up. You haven't given the total control of your life. You haven't recognized Jesus as God of the universe. And you haven't trusted that That's the first area of control you've got to give over, is the big area. And then God starts teaching you about the other areas. And you work through that. But that's the first place. And maybe that's where you need to start. You need to recognize that your judgment's corrupted by sin. It's always going to be jacked up in some way or another. And the only chance you have is to trust in a man who was God, that died on a cross a long time ago to pay for the sin that is in my heart, that I can never pay for. Maybe that's where we start. And if that's you, on that card you have, and you want to do that, that's something, there's a card there, write your name, write a contact number, and there's a place in that gray box up there where you can check, I would like to follow Jesus Christ for the first time today. If today's the first time you've made a decision to follow Christ, that's when you check that card. Maybe, and when the baskets come by here in a couple minutes, that's what I want you to put in the basket. That's your deal. Maybe you want to talk to a pastor about something. There's a specific area of control that you want prayer about. Write on that card, I'm having a hard time controlling this person at work, and I need to let God do it and control myself. And that may be all you want to put down. But you put that on that prayer request line at the bottom of that card, and our prayer team's going to pray about it all week long. You will have support in helping you do that. Maybe you want to talk to somebody about it, maybe me or Bruce or Steve. Check on there. I want to talk to Pastor Jim. I'll talk to you then. Or if you want to just if you want to cross my name out and say, oh, it seems kind of weird, I'll talk to Steve. Yeah, that's okay. Just cross that out. You can talk to our connections pastor, Steve, or Bruce, our executive pastor. But just do that, and we will get in touch with you this week. Right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pray for you, because I know that there are people wrestling with control here. It's impossible to have this many people in a place and have somebody who's wrestling with control over some area. So would you pray with me, please, as I pray for you?
Thanks for being a part of Bay West today. Bay West Church meets at 100 Emerson Road in Palm Bay at 11 a.m. on Sundays. Please feel free to check us out at baywestchurch.org, or you can follow us on Facebook at Bay West Church.